is Margaret. In 1972, I was born in the Louth Hospital. 3 days later, I was illegally adopted and taken to Dublin and given a brand new identity. A doctor in Carrickmacross, County Monaghan, facilitated my illegal adoption and that of many, many other children. In 2008, I started a search for my birth mother, and after 12 years of frustration, sadness and anger, all of my dreams finally came true when I met my fantastic mother, who was incidentally married to my birth dad. I am very lucky to have met with them and have a gorgeous sister and a fantastic brother. My message to you is, no matter what your quest, never lose hope and never give up.
Hello, Margaret Norton, the person that was in that video. How are you this morning?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure, Margaret. You're an inspiration, really, what you've done. Maybe you'd go into a bit more detail, bring us back to the very beginning, how you discovered that you were one of the illegal adoptees.
Well, when myself and my husband started dating first, before we ever had our own kids, we thought that we might go to Denver on a work permit. So when we got the application form, it asked for an adoption certificate if you were adopted. Yeah. So I went to my adopted parents and I asked them, could I have a copy of this, because I had to produce it for the visa. And to say that my father went a paler shade of grey would have been the understatement of the year. Yeah. So prior to that, I must never have needed my birth cert for anything. But anyway, at this point, I needed to produce my birth cert, so I applied for a copy of my birth cert as well. And when I got my birth cert, it showed that my adopted parents were named as my birth parents on it.
Okay.
And I scoured the birth cert that it might have something on it saying, like what it should have said on it was that this was an extract from the adoption register, but it didn't. So anyway, I went back and I asked at that stage. Now, I'll have to say, I always knew I was adopted. It was never, no, I wasn't. That wasn't the news. I always knew I was adopted, and I had a wonderful upbringing. I was extremely lucky. But I asked the question as to why that they were listed as my birth parents. And, he just kind of cringed and he just said, that was just the way it was done at the time. So, I have a very inquisitive nature, and, I kind of thought there's just something not right about this. So for a long, long time, I never did anything about it. And then when I had my son, who is about to turn 24, I was kind of, the whole motherhood thing comes into it. And I was saying, God, this is really a big deal, and I was just curious then about, what was she like, or, what were the circumstances surrounding it? And I was never bitter, or I was never annoyed or vexed with her. Just as a mother myself now, I realize the enormity of having a baby. So again, kind of shelved it for a good number of years. I had Luke, and then Lucy was born then 5 years after him. And then we moved house then. And it was kind of maybe 7 or 8 years into the move that I had a little bit more time to myself. And obviously, as the kids were getting bigger, you were kind of becoming more, I was just curious. So I said to my husband, do you think we should maybe approach this and see what we can find out? Now, my adopted mother at this stage had Alzheimer's, so there was very little that she could tell me. And I did inquire of my dad again, but he was just he was just reluctant, which, just made me even more curious. Um, so we,
Margaret, there's an awful lot to be said for gut instinct.
oh,
No
no, and
matter
I knew.
what I find remarkable in it is that you knew you were adopted, yet they were down as birth parents. And
Yes,
did they not think that at any stage throughout your life you were actually going to ask, well, how am I adopted if I'm down on my birth cert as yours?
I think, look, they probably did. Now, a cousin of mine on my adopted side has told me that my adopted mother did go back to Dr. Creedon and approached her for any information that she might
That's
have had.
that to
That
bring
was,
people up to date.
that facilitated all these adoptions.
Yeah.
And my adopted mother did go back to her and did approach her and say to her, at some point, this doll here is going to ask some questions. Have you any information that I can give her? And Dr. Creedon literally ran her from the door and said that that wasn't part of the deal. So I'm sure it was a fear in their head that how were they going to explain this? And again, I've no bitterness towards them for doing it the way they did, because I think the reality of it is they wouldn't have got me if they didn't do it her way. Because this was the kind of personality that she had. Everything was done her way, the doctor's way.
Desperate when people are desperate for a child.
Oh, absolutely. And that was what it was. It was desperation. And they really, they had no choice.
Yeah.
That was the bottom line.
And
so
yet her
anyway,
daughter denied that her daughter has come out publicly and denied that Dr. Creedon did anything, we have to say, anything untoward, and that she was nothing but a compassionate doctor who never made anything out of it.
Who ruined,
disagree with
God knows how many lives. God knows how many lives she ruined.
And I was shocked to find out that Eamon de Valera's son was also allegedly. Would we say allegedly?
Well, yeah, you can. But look, there wasn't just the two of them either. There was doctors, I'm sure, up and down the country doing this. Because, like, for instance, just in my particular case, so on my birth cert, it had that I was born in Dr. Creedon's surgery. So that wasn't the case. I wasn't born there. I was born in the Louth Hospital. So somebody took me from my mother. We think, held me in the nursery there for 3 days. And somebody passed me on. Somebody in the hospital knew that this was happening because somebody passed me on to my adopted parents. So somebody took me out of the hospital, not my birth mother. So, this was like a chain effect here. There was lots of people who knew that this was going on and stood back and allowed it to happen.
Wall of silence.
Completely.
I'm still baffled that parents, you went through your first Holy Communion, your confirmation.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I presume you went on holiday. You had a passport.
Yeah.
And none of this flagged until you were going to America.
Yes. And it was funny because, well, it wasn't funny, but because so we didn't go to America. But after that, I remember when we got married, we were going to Ibiza. We had Luke at this stage, and we were going to Ibiza, and it was the day after we had gotten married. And I remember the guy in the airport saying to me, enjoy your holiday, Mrs. Norton. And I was going, if only you knew, because I was, everything about my identity is a complete and utter lie.
Yeah.
Because I was never,
how you must have felt that everything was a lie and that
and still is. And what's worse, and what I feel worse about, is that my children's identities are a lie.
Because you're saying to yourself that phrase that goes over and over in your head, I'm trying to find myself. Do you know
Yeah,
that really common phrase, I'm trying to
yeah.
find myself? In your
But
case, you're
my
really,
but my children's passports have been generated out of my passport, which has been generated out of my birth cert, which
yeah,
is a load of crap. Like there's nothing about their identity is true either.
no. That's the problem, you see. I suppose that's the dilemma
Yeah,
that occurs when you don't know. People say, does the right of the child, the adoptee, supersede the right of the mother? Do you know? I would say yes, because you need to know what has happened in your background.
yeah,
You need to know your medical record,
yeah. And that was a
and
big thing for me because I'd had the kids. Now, luckily, look at I had no issues when I was pregnant, and touch wood, I turned 50 this year, and I've had no medical issues. But I am going to do DNA testing that will tell me whether or not I'm susceptible to anything. Um, because I have some information now at this stage, but you just don't know because and I need to know. Like I need to know for myself. I need to know for my daughter if there's anything in that line coming down after us. Um, and they're things that people who are not in my situation take for granted.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's safe to say you had a wonderful childhood and wonderful parents, if you like.
Absolutely.
Your adopted parents were, is it nature or nurture? Your parents were obviously very good people to you,
Yeah.
but they kept a secret that they never thought would come out.
Yeah. And look, I thought,
They told you that you were adopted. It's so, they told you, I presume, that you were adopted.
oh,
You didn't
I
just,
like, I mean, for as long back as I can remember, so they went that far, and I often wonder why because I would never have questioned my birth cert otherwise.
no, that's what I'm wondering. If they had never said anything to you, the fact that your name was down as their birth daughter, you
Yeah.
would never have known.
Look, it may never have come up. The only thing I suppose that might have happened as time went on, because DNA is so prevalent now.
Yes, you would.
Like if let's just say if I had done an ancestry DNA kit with somebody in my family, like in the family, in my adopted family, and it showed you have no blood relation, well then that clearly would have come out. And I think for Dr. Creedon too, she never envisaged that DNA would be as big as it is, because like it was DNA that found me my family in the long run.
That was 50 years ago. They
That
could never
was
have envisaged
yeah,
people able to find
no, no,
just with saliva to be able
yeah,
to find every one of their relatives
yeah.
for
Yeah,
generations.
and the thing about it is the test that I'm going to do for the predisposed illnesses, that's DNA as well.
Yeah.
So DNA is going to be huge from here on in.
Yeah, I have to do one of those as well because there's a history of throat cancer. My mother, grandmother, and cousins all had throat cancer. So
Yeah.
there's a history in the family, and so, but I'm reluctant to do it. My show,
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to find out things that I might not want to find out.
Well, look, there's often comfort in ignorance too, isn't there?
Hmm.
And if you
Listen,
don't know what's coming, well, at least you can sort of, go on. But look, really, it is as well to know, I think, so is that you can watch for stuff.
yeah, there is that, but yeah, I'm one of these people who likes to. I would never have done what you did, no, because I bury my head in the sand.
Oh, look, I didn't take this lightly either. Like when we eventually did the DNA, it was last chance saloon, because what we had done in the preceding 12 years, when I think back now, was outrageous. Like people if you know, when my children tell their children what I did, they will think it was the most bizarre thing. We were on the road every weekend. We questioned, I'd say when my car rolled into Carrickmacross, people must have been thinking, oh my God, here she is again. Because Carrickmacross was the only link I had. And the people up there were very, very good. And we met so many nice people who were so willing to help, but just couldn't.
That's
Um,
that's the thing about small places. People know everything, but
yeah,
they
but no,
they
and
become
and they,
Spanish, if you like,
yeah,
and very very private.
yeah, but they didn't know. You see, they didn't know what Dr. Creedon was doing. They didn't realize that she was doing something as absolute criminal as she was.
And has it been proven now? Have you been able to prove that Dr. Creedon was um, um, doing that she was behind and knowing and took money for it?
Absolutely, sure. My mother was attending her. My birth mother was attending her, and she like, I mean, she took me, and she passed me to my adopted parents in through the window of the car in a car park of a hotel. Like, if that's not the absolute definition of trafficking, you know, what is?
It's
Like, she
shocking.
did this. She told my birth mother 3 days after she'd had me that if she darkened her door again, she would have her institutionalized. Like, you know, I don't know what more proof the state or anybody like that needs. There was I did a radio show with Keelan, a television show actually, when Keelan Shanley, you know, God rest her, was alive,
God
with
rest her.
Allison O'Reilly. And
Yeah.
by the time we came out of that TV show, Allison had 19 different people. Now, they weren't in the same position as I was. Some of them hadn't had as happy a childhood. Some of them weren't confident enough or just weren't in the same place as me to come forward. But 19 in the space of the time that we were in doing that show on RTA.
Yeah.
Like, it was outrageous. A woman came forward after I did my story and said that she found an account in her husband's farm ledgers, a payment to Dr. Creedon of £2,000.
Wow.
So,
But that, as you quite rightly say, if that's true, that is that is trafficking. Trafficking.
no doubt, I know. And the thing about it is, we know that Mary McDermott brought children on the train from Bessborough. Mary McDermott is Dr. Creedon's daughter. She brought
Yes.
children on the train.
And yet she says that her mother was a good, kind person who never took anything from anybody.
Well, I don't believe that, and nobody will ever convince me of that.
What was I going to say? How did you progress it? How did you once you found out that you were well, you knew you were always adopted, but once you found out that you were not that you were down on your birth cert, one, it's safe to say it threw your opportunity of going to the States probably in up in a bit of a turmoil, because there was you couldn't prove who you were.
No, and I couldn't stand over my application at that stage anyway. But we just started. Like I said, we made a beeline for Carrickmacross. We spoke to people up and down that street where that surgery was, and you know, like I said, people were great. Any little bit of a lead we got at all, we followed up on it. And like, we did that for probably 10 years, literally any spare time that we had. And like I said, people were very good. We met loads of people who were willing to help, who were trying to help, but just couldn't. And And then the final straw, my husband suggested to me one day to do the DNA. He said, why don't you just do it? And like, I got very upset about it. There was a lot of picture and no sound here for a number of days, because I knew if I did the DNA and I found nothing, that was it. There was nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So it did take me, sort of a fortnight or maybe 3 weeks to come around to that idea. But it was having such an impact on me emotionally and physically that at that point then I knew that for me and for my family, I had to either put this to bed or do the DNA. So I did the DNA, and like, as they say, the rest is history. It matched me with a first cousin who I didn't know. And actually, we got the results of that a couple of days before we were due to go on holidays. And look, we agreed here that we would do nothing about it until we came back from holidays. But you know yourself, when you're away and you have...
That must have been some holiday.
No, we didn't, because we didn't even get that far. I was like 2 days into the holidays, and I said to my husband, I said, I have to email her. And he goes, I knew well. He says, I knew well when you'd get a couple of minutes. So anyway, I did email her, and we did speak, and she had narrowed it down to, like, it was her father's side of the house that she was pretty convinced where I was going to find my mother. So like, I had gone from anybody in the world that it could have been down to about 4 or 5 people at that point.
My God,
so
DNA, it's amazing, isn't it, DNA?
Oh, like, I mean, it's the only thing that helped me. But
what did we do before it?
I know, but you see, that's why there's so much. That is actually why there's so much problems surrounding this issue now, because so many people, like, I know I was sort of 47 when I did this, but like, there's people in their 70s and 80s.
So this is only 2 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years ago.
But there's people now in their 70s and 80s looking for people.
Yes.
Who the state have only recently told them, actually, you're one of the, and this business about the 152 for St. Patrick's Guild absolutely riles me, because there was lots of people outside of St. Patrick's Guild that were a product of this system.
Please explain to us what's about St. Patrick's Guild.
So what TUSLA did and what the state have done is they did a recce of all the files, and they found their claim to fame is that they found 152 people, records for people who were illegally adopted, and this was the information that they put out. But like, you are literally talking the tip of the iceberg. I think when there was a further investigation carried out, there was something like 20,000 people. And I would say that's even conservative.
I'm going to show this photograph here if I share screen, if I can. No, it's not. It's not possible. But there was a Dublin woman here. You probably know of her, Eileen Mackin, 81 years of age, before she found her 103-year-old mother.
Yeah. And
she said she was so thrilled, and she never let go of my hands, and she put her arms around me. 81 years of age before you find.
And there will be loads of that. There'll be loads of that.
81, not knowing who you are, it's a long time not knowing your background and not knowing your genetic makeup or your medical background, or if you had any medical condition at all that was hereditary.
Yeah, and that's working on the basis that you knew you were adopted. Like, these 152 people that Two-Split found records for. The vast majority of them didn't know that they were adopted.
Mm.
And when Two-Split put out this news that they were going to contact these people, oh my God, a shiver went down my spine. Because I was thinking, they were first of all, they were asking for people to come forward who thought that they might have been. But you don't think, you don't think you're adopted. You either know or you don't know. You don't think you are. But the vast majority of those people that they wrote to didn't know that the parents that they had grown up with were not their parents.
Mm.
And Two-Split, they have upended people's lives without the proper systems in place to support those people.
But I mean, in many cases, people like yourself were very lucky to have found good homes. You're not taking away from anything, and loved your adopted parents, and that it's the fact that not knowing that well, in your case, knowing you were adopted, but the shock then of finding out that probably if you'd had your birth cert much earlier, it might have twigged that you were done.
Well, I wonder, would I have asked the question? I might not have asked the question earlier. At that stage, I was maybe 18 or 19. If I had looked at my birth cert 2 or 3 years before that, I probably, I might have looked at it and not really paid attention to what was on it. I might have just thought that that's the way things were.
Yeah, it's a strange one that they actually told you were adopted, and yet you were down on the paper as theirs by birth. They needn't have told you, because you'd never have known unless you did a DNA.
Like I said, unless you did, unless at this stage of my life, or that I had to do DNA for something.
But they'd never have envisaged 50 years ago the ever possibility of, I think, any parent giving up their child, and it must be singularly the hardest thing in the world for a parent to give up their child. But 50 years ago, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, how could they have ever thought that they were going to meet their child again at any stage in their lives through DNA?
And in fairness, I'd say a lot of mothers, and I know this from dealing with people who have come to me since this whole thing with Two-Split started, looking for a bit of help. A lot of mothers, for whatever reason, and I don't believe it's convenience, have mastered being able to block that time out of their life. I think they went through such a horrendous time at the start, when they gave up their child, and they were told, it was drummed into them, we are not revisiting this time. We're done now with this. You had the child, you've given it up. Well, you haven't given it up. The child has been taken from you. We will not be revisiting this. So almost brainwashed. And I believe that happened. I believe that there is parents who are now in their 80s, women who are in their 80s, who actually believe, that this didn't happen to them because it was so horrendous.
Yeah. It's just, in many cases, it's almost miraculous as well. The whole process of DNA testing, and that you can actually just by spitting into a container can find out everyone. Sometimes you probably wouldn't want to find out the people in retrospect.
Yeah, well, there's a danger in that too. Yeah.
I mean, I'm an only child, and of an only child, but you'd be wondering, you'd say to yourself, if I did a DNA test, it could be related to a mass murder. Do you want to know these things? But at the same time, there is this healthy desire to know, who am I? I mean, I only ever had to look into my father's eyes to know who I was. I mean, I looked at him, and we both looked. I'm like my mother used to say when she'd be in a bad mood, you're just like the Honans. So it was just, I could never deny it. My poor father was so quiet, but
Yeah,
just like your father.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I always knew she was annoyed with me then if she said that, because he was so quiet, he didn't say anything, he just nodded his head. But, there's a comfort, I suppose, in seeing somebody that looks like you.
Oh,
How did
yeah, that was a big thing for me because like people would have said to me, "Oh my God, the kids are the spit of you," and people would mean well, but yeah, people would mean well, but I'd be sitting there going, "Oh my God," like I would just want to just curl up because I wanted to know who I looked like, and
and
as it turns out, I do look like my birth family, and there is comfort in that.
yeah,
But like all those years that people would have said, "Oh my God, he's the spitty," in every way, even in the way that he, even in the way that he, especially Luke, I suppose, the way he does things, or just his attitude to things. And like I said, for years, I would just cringe when somebody would say it to me because I had nobody to compare myself with.
I saw that on, I watch a program, and what's her name does it? She used to do Big Brother, but it's
Davina.
retraced Davina McCall. And I watch that program all the time. And one of the things that comes out of all of them is this desire to know, who do I look like?
Yeah,
My child is the only person in the
yeah,
world that resembles me, but I
yeah,
don't know who I resemble. And that can't be understated, because as human beings, as beings, we need we desire we know we belong to somebody,
yeah,
but who but and we always gravitate towards our own blood, if you
yeah,
like, good or bad. And
yeah.
it's nice
And it,
to look and say, oh, I have this aspect of my father and that aspect of my mother,
yeah,
or maybe my
yeah.
father, no, or my mother. But when you don't know that,
No, and it is, look, it's just a natural thing. It's not, I just think it's a very basic natural instinct that you would have.
what did your adopted father, and I say adopted father, but he was the father you knew, the only father you ever really knew. What did he find out that you had actually?
No,
Uh,
they both died. My mother died in May of 2012, and he died in October. So I hadn't found them at this stage.
and he never spoke about it to you.
No,
Isn't that funny?
yeah,
That's almost even harder, because they told you you're adopted. You find out that um, you're down in the birth list, and that something untoward or underhanded has happened, and you're left in limbo.
yeah. Look at it was, and there's no question it did cause. I'm not going to say a barrier, but it did cause, an atmosphere at times. But
Yeah,
again, look at, they would have been older parents getting me. They were in their 40s when they got me. So by the time it was coming around to me asking questions, like they were, you know,
80.
yeah. And it was just, it was too, I'd say it was just too much for them to go there to say what exactly had happened.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Yeah.
So, how difficult was the process? I mean, it obviously was just the DNA actually did it for you in the end.
Oh, yeah. Look, at there was lots
And how
of,
did you approach your family? Yeah, I mean, apart from your cousin, I presume you met other family members, and who
yeah.
showed you the photograph of your mother and your father? Did you
So
ever?
I let it sit for a little while. Um, and around, like, actually, it would have been around this time of the year. I wrote a letter to her. Now, at this stage, I didn't realize my mother and father were married, because after speaking to my cousin, who in turn went and spoke to her father, her father didn't want her to talk to me anymore. So anyway, she had given me enough information, and I'd had enough experience at this stage to let it run myself. So I contacted Allison again, and we had kept in contact all the way down through the years anyway, and she's a great help and she's a great inspiration to anybody. But we headed off to births, deaths and marriages with the surname that I had at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the grace of God, it was a surname that's not very common. And under the date of birth that I had, I think there was 4 people.
So you were able to narrow it down to 4.
Oh, well, like, I mean, I knew which one I was at that stage because I knew where my mother lived. So I was able to get, for the first time, I was able to see my own birth cert because I'm in there twice. I'm in births, deaths and marriages twice. So we got it that day, and look, it was a bit surreal. We went off to lunch, and Bob was with me, and Allison and her little boy, and like the 3 of us kind of sat and looked at each other and went, you know, oh my God, like, is this real? So anyway, I let it sit for a couple of weeks, and we made contact with another family member, and she said to leave it with her. But look, as time went on, I was getting a bit more impatient. I had the address of I knew where my birth mother lived. I was never going to doorstep her anyway. So I just wrote a very simple card. I said that I knew that I was related to them. I didn't even say that I knew what the relationship was. I just said that I knew I was related to them, and I was just looking for information about myself and if they could help me out at all. So we posted it by registered post, and my father got the card, and he rang me then 2 days later after I'd posted it.
Wow.
So
but
he just...
Margaret, isn't that in itself something fabulous, that you knew that they didn't run away from wanting to know you?
No, I mean, because we weren't sure, like, somebody would get this card, and we were kind of thinking, this was August, we were kind of thinking maybe we'll get a response by Christmas. You know, again, somebody processes this, because obviously they would have known, even though I didn't say it in the letter, but they would have known once they received the card who I was, like that I was her daughter. Now, like I said, at this stage, we didn't know that I didn't know that he was my father.
Probably it would have filtered down from your cousin and within the family.
I don't know if it had, actually. I don't know if it had at that stage. I think there was a bit of fear and there was a bit of secrecy still around it. So anyway, he rang and we spoke for about an hour that day. And I met him then the following weekend. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, I met my mother then. And
within a month, your life had taken a complete turn, and you had finally found basically the people that brought you into this world. Amazing.
Yeah. And then to realize then that I had full siblings as well. Like, I have a full brother and a full sister. You know, and the thing about it was, I am a bit of a tomboy and was always a bit of a tomboy, and I always wanted a brother. And look at, he's fab, you know, and he's very, you know, he's very country, and he's very, but he's great, and he's all I would want. He's all I would want in a brother, like, because I don't know if I had gotten a brother that, you know, was very, what would I say, groomed, or, you know, worked in an office. Like, he's just like me, you know, he farms, and he's, you know, he's country. And
that's in, Margaret, that's in your genetic coding.
Yeah.
That's that's you were never probably going to have a very uh, suave, sophisticated business type
No,
person.
and
Not the way you are.
no, and I'm like, I work for a solicitor, so I have to be business-like during the week, and and I'm very business-like, and I'm very, confident in my work and that sort of thing. But there's just a bit of a tomboy in me, and I think, you know,
And
we
if
we
you
are
had
like,
your life, you'd have been working on the farm.
well, probably, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's in the genes, If
yeah,
my mum used to say, "Brishan an dúchas tre hulavan quit." Basically, what runs by nature costs no money. It's
yeah,
there, and there's
yeah,
nothing you can actually do about it.
yeah,
It's your genes, and
yeah,
obviously, you see it's mirrored in your brother.
yeah, yeah.
And it's amazing that, what was the feeling like, Margaret, when you met your adopted father, your biological, your father? What was it like?
Um,
Were you nervous? What was it like to
oh
meet?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually met him on my daughter's birthday. Um, and yeah, we were kind of nervous, and I'm sure he was nervous. The one thing that he did do, which I thought was lovely, was he brought photos of everybody else.
Oh, so they really
Um,
wanted to meet you. They probably had been looking forever for you.
well, no, I don't think they were. I think it was very much a case that that was something that happened, and we weren't going to discuss it any further because my brother and sister didn't know about me.
That must have been a
You
shock,
know,
a good
yeah,
shock.
and it was a shock. And this, like they're hearing about this as adults. Like my sister is 14 months younger than me, and my brother is 14 months younger than her. So it's not like as if there was big gaps or anything like that. So they've grown up their whole lives not knowing either.
Yeah,
Uh,
amazing, isn't it?
and it
And
is. Look, it's hard because everybody's coming into this as adults, and everybody has lived their lives a certain way, and then you get this, and it's not always easy.
no. But the two of you, the three of you now have, a family of two has now suddenly become three in their
Yeah,
case, or in your
yeah.
case, family of one. I presume you were brought up as an only child.
No, I have a sister. No, she wasn't adopted. She was their own. But yeah, she's 9 years older than me. She lives in America.
How did she feel about the whole situation?
Well, we're a little bit, we're kind of estranged.
Okay,
So we don't speak.
that's just
But it
to
was hard. But like, I mean, I'm sure it was hard for my brother and sister because she was the only girl and the eldest all her life
and now
until I
she's
came along. And now, like, she's the middle child now, and there's two of us, there's two girls.
well, getting
So,
back to meeting your dad, the first moment you laid eyes on him, was that a moment where you said to yourself, now I know to whom I belong. Now I know where I belong.
yeah,
Was
of
that
course. Like, I'm not sure if I just thought that then because there was, it kind of happened, it all happened so quickly. Like, he had phoned me on a Tuesday and I met him on the Saturday. So it all happened very quickly. And like I said, I was working full time at the time. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, so all that other stuff still continued. Um, so it was all a bit of a whirlwind. And yeah, of course, there was trepidation, and there was, I didn't have a huge amount of questions for them. Obviously, I wanted to know what exactly had happened. And, like, the story that was related back to me only, cemented what I already knew about Dr. Creedon, and the way she treated people and that sort of thing. So, yeah, no, it was kind of, I think I definitely felt, maybe not that night, but after a couple of days, I felt like as if there was a weight lifted, because we had put in such a horrendous few years prior to that.
Yeah, just showing a photograph here of
Yeah.
you with your younger self.
Yeah. Yeah. God.
That's
I'm not very
lovely.
good at looking at photos of myself, I have to say.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. Um, when you met your mum, what was your
Yeah,
reaction?
look,
I don't know
she,
whether they say that the blood warms so much when you meet your mum, no matter what. There's you again. I watched this program probably way too much, Dorina McCall's program, but
yeah,
there's different reactions, and some people just really automatically just bond instantly the minute they hug.
yeah.
Others not so much, and others have a sense of anger towards their parents
No,
that
I
they
never
didn't really
felt,
get.
no, I never felt angry towards her. Because, like I said, I had spoken to so many other mothers, um, who had been in the same situation as her. So no, I never felt angry. I didn't, like, for me, my adopted mother was the only mother I ever knew,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
she will always remain as that. Um, like, again, it was kind of surreal. I am a very strong person. I'm very confident
Compassion.
in my own skin. So I wasn't looking for somebody to take the place of my adopted mother.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, of course, this was going to change my life, but my
But
family here.
curiosity. It's a natural curiosity, Margaret.
Oh
When
yeah,
you see
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
child, you say, "Well, I thought you said I was adopted, but I'm down as your birth child.
yeah,
So I'm not adopted." And then
yeah,
and then all the questions start coming. It would with me too.
yeah,
In people who are naturally curious, I'm very curious. That would
yeah,
eat and like find an answer to it, like you.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, so like I wasn't looking for people to take the place of my parents. I never wanted them to step in, as a parent, but I just always just wanted to know their side, not because I was going to make a judgment on it or anything like that. Because, like I said, I'd been doing this for 12 years. I'd heard some horrendous stories, but just to hear the circumstances that surrounded it. So yeah, look, it was very different. It was, you know, you're looking at these people and can see them looking back at you, and you know that you look like them. So there was never a question of that.
Even
Um,
manner, Margaret, even mannerisms, hand
oh
movements,
yeah,
hand. Do you know? I
oh
mean,
yeah,
when I look back on my own father, and you look at strange little things, the hands. I look at my cousins in the UK, and it's the one thing I look at, and they all have the same hands. My
yeah,
mother had very different hands. She had very long fingers, very
yeah,
slender hands.
yeah. Well,
And
the
the
three of
whole.
us now, like the three of us would all be very dark. We'd all have very dark eyes.
Yeah, same,
Um,
yeah.
And like if you look at pictures of my two, maybe when they were very up to the time that they were 5, you would think that they were Gary or Gary's kids.
Yeah,
They're just like carbon copies.
of your brother.
And I think like my Luke is like Gary. He's built like him. He's broad, and the resemblance is more probably with the kids than me actually. Um, so yeah,
It seems to me like you have really bonded instantly with Gary.
yeah, yeah, and
Isn't it?
I'm not to the point where we're not at the stage where we need to speak to each other every day, but he'll text on a funny video, or he'll, and we ring and speak, maybe once or twice a week. And um, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy between him and I, and like that's what it needs to be, because I also didn't want to come in and upend their lives either,
Yeah.
because they have lived their lives a certain way for all those years.
In a
And
sense, I relaxed with you. It's not like, as you say, that suddenly now I've got a family and we're always together and
no,
we're never at each other's side. It's like you've always been together. There's that easiness. I have
yeah,
a friend that I could see. I mightn't see her for a week or 2 weeks, maybe a month, and it's like we'll always find a way of and a conversation. It's like we just saw
yeah,
each other yesterday,
yeah,
and there's a great comfort in that.
yeah. And that's the way we would be. Like, there's no effort about a conversation. Like, I can text him and just say, how's things, or, like I said, he'll send me, something that he's seen on Facebook or on any of those, social media things, and you just kind of laugh at it. And the same way is, it's just easy. It's easy with him.
So with the other group, you were saying that there was others. 11 contacted Allison.
Yeah,
Allison's a good friend of mine now. Was working here until doing shows with Pat.
yeah,
She was on the panel with Pat Barry and myself. But she's a great person and a great journalist. But you said that Allison had 11 people within the space of time that you were on the show.
yeah.
Um, uh, have you been able to maintain a connection with them? Have you formed a group?
No,
I,
I didn't. No, I
I,
didn't form a group with them, but I was in the Who Am I group, the In It Together from the Who Am I series documentary that RTE did.
oh yeah,
And these were mostly people who formed that part of that group that Tusla informed, like only in the last 3 or 4 years that they were in fact adopted. So
yeah.
I was part of that group. Now I have stepped back a little bit from it because I just had some other things going on and I wasn't able to commit to it 100%. But yeah, so that is a working group that, they do work tirelessly to try and, get information for people, and and they're working through this newfound news themselves that they're in fact adopted as well.
Yeah. But the
So
doctor that was at the center of this, have you been able to get any
she's dead.
satisfaction?
She's
No,
dead.
but from her family,
Oh
because I
no.
mean,
Well, her family would never speak to me anyway. Like, I had written to both her son and her daughter. Now, her daughter did respond to me, and she said the same as what you said, that her mother was only doing this out of the goodness of her heart. Um, so so
Doctor
they
what?
never.
Doctor what was her name again?
Dr.
Doctor.
Creedon, Irene Creedon,
Yeah.
and her son wrote me quite a nasty letter. But no, so we haven't. And like I said, I have asked. I'm
Yeah.
on my third Minister for Children now, asking for an investigation into it, but so you get the same response each and every time.
I have,
Um,
sorry, I have to say that she's Marie McDermott, and she
yeah,
said she is so upset that Dr. Creedon, who died 10 years ago, this was in 2013, is now being remembered for the controversial adoptions. Miss McDermott was commenting after one of the adopted children spoke out about her illegal adoption and how it has made it almost impossible for her to find out who her parents or birth parents are. Margaret Norton told how her adoptive parents collected her from the car park of a County Louth hotel 3 days after she was born. That was in the Independent
Yeah,
on the 6th of August 2022. A
yeah,
GP who ran illegal adoptions was a heroine, says daughter.
yeah. And I mean, that's
You can
like, I mean, the
understand.
only word that I didn't use during that whole thing was I didn't use the word illegal or trafficking, which is what I should have used. But at that stage, I probably didn't realize that I was, that it was as outrageous, I suppose, as it really was. I didn't realize that that it did come down to being trafficked from one county to another nearly.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can dress this up as much as you like. But like that's essentially what it boils down to
Yeah.
is she was facilitating these adoptions. She was getting paid for them. And she wasn't doing it out of the goodness of her heart. It was for monetary gain.
Yeah, you just wonder the psyche of somebody that and I can understand though that a daughter would want to try and protect
Oh, completely.
mother.
Absolutely.
You never want to think, no matter what your mother has done to you or that you've heard them that they've done to anyone. I can imagine that you'd always want to kind of protect them, their name, especially if they're dead. But at some level, she must question
But
the.
what vexed me at the time was she's a mother. She's a woman. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
she
yeah.
first and foremost, she's a woman, and surely would she not have had a bit of compassion for me in that regard?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's I mean, I suppose I'm trying to be the devil's advocate
Oh yeah,
and try and put on the alternate cap and try to imagine it from, I mean, what it's like growing up with your own mother, anyone's own mother, and that no matter how much you'll fight, at the end of the day, you'll always make up excuses for your mother that you probably would never make up for another human being.
oh
Um,
completely,
you
absolutely. And like I mean, I would do. I have done this for for years, not for things that they did, but like I said, I never felt any animosity towards my adopted parents. It wasn't done in the correct form, but I know why they did it. And they did it because they had no option but to do it that way.
Yeah. So
Because
what's next now for you? You're now comfortable. It has to be said in your own head because you now know where you belong, and you
next for
you
me,
also
well,
know.
what's next for me is that, you know, the certainly the last couple of years they've been different. They've been there's been a lot of readjusting and all that sort of thing. And um, look at I wouldn't have been in sort of a great place this time last year. So I've had to a certain extent, take a step backwards, and just look after myself. And because
COVID.
first and foremost,
COVID that didn't help.
no,
COVID.
COVID didn't help. But not only that, look at you're going into these relationships all as adults. It's hard to nurture an adult relationship when you've been brought up by different parents. They have brought up their kids differently to the way I was brought up. And like I said, there's all these different personalities, and it doesn't work all the time. So
But even
going,
if you had grown up together, you probably would all have those little idiosyncrasies as well.
yeah,
Because, I mean, even within families that are all brought up together, they can be also vastly different. Do you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Because taking on everyone else, a mixture of the parents' traits. So even if you had been brought up with them, you possibly still would be the person you are today.
Yeah, would probably, but I'm just going to I'm going to continue and nurture the relationship between Gary and myself, and I'm going to look after myself. Um, I had over 10 years searching for them, and like a lot of things were put on hold in my own life, and we're getting to the stage now where our own children are now adults. So there is a little bit more time for ourselves. And I am just going to like embrace that and take some time out for myself and just, take life a little bit easier and not have my head full of stuff, which it had been for probably 15 or 16 years now.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing about it, it's taken you so long to actually find each other. Now you should just enjoy being around each other and just getting to
Yeah.
know. It's not easy. I imagine. I don't know what I would do if I, as an only child of an only child, suddenly found out I had a sister or a brother.
Yeah.
Don't know how I would cope with that, because as only children, you like to think of yourself as never being spoiled, having to share everything, which I did with friends and or people and that I played with and things like that. It's vastly different when you find out that you have a sister
Oh
or a
yeah,
brother.
it's a big upheaval of any house. And like I suppose I was probably in nearly in a better position than my brother and sister because I knew that there was a possibility that this was going to happen. Because I was always open to the idea that, my mother could have been married again and she could have had other children. Now, I'd never entered my head at all that she would have been married to my dad and that there would have been full siblings, but there was always a possibility that there was going to be other half siblings. But for
And
them, they knew nothing about me. So, like, it was a huge upheaval in their lives.
she must have had huge regrets handing you over, huge sorrow.
Oh, sure, look, it would have affected her. It has affected her, for
Is she,
her whole life.
is she still alive, your mother?
She is, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's good. And is the relationship positive?
It, no, it's strained.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
it
sorry
is
to hear.
strained.
Well, that
Um,
it can be, there's a lot that she's probably trying to process as well. It's not,
yeah,
is your dad,
it's difficult for both of us.
is
And
your dad still
it's like
alive?
I said, I wasn't looking for somebody to take the place of my mother. Like my adopted mother will always be my mum. Um, and again, it's this whole, trying to nurture relationships with adults.
Yeah.
It does pose its problems.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the mind of somebody who's had to give their child away 50 years ago, and suddenly
Yeah,
that child, and there's a lot of guilt, probably, that they're feeling, a lot of sorrow
yeah.
and emotions that they're not able to actually, and a lot of, I suppose, a sense of grief as well for the years that she lost with you.
Oh yeah, and like I mean, I had a bit of that too. Would you go through the would life have been different kind of thing, and it's a very emotional thing,
Yeah,
and it all of that takes time to process, and it has taken its toll. It has taken its toll on me. It has taken its toll on my family. Um, so I have to look after me. If I can't look after me, I can't look after my own family either.
no. Well, I'm glad things have worked their way out for you, Margaret, that you haven't spent
Yeah,
your entire life trying to find out who am I. Do you know that you
yeah,
now have an idea of who you've been up to now, but who the people were that made you who you are,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Oh yeah, and like, I mean, that was what I set out to do, and
Yeah.
you know, we've done that now, and we just have to, you know, focus on what other stuff is important in our lives now.
Yeah, which is your immediate, and you now know who you look like and who
Yeah.
your and who your. Before we go, did you have to change your passport information or
No, I
anything?
didn't. I didn't because, you know, I don't know if that'd be more trouble than it's worth. Either because you know, they just tend, nothing ever seems to be straightforward to do it. So no, I didn't do anything like that.
Let-
You know, my
let's
adopted parents gave me an identity, and you know, rightly or wrongly, that's the identity that I go by.
Of course, and that's the, that's the way it is. I mean, they reared you, and
Oh
your
yeah,
birth gave brought you into life. So between them all, they made you the person you are.
absolutely.
And in many respects, I suppose you're very fortunate to have had two our parents that wanted to meet you, birth
Oh yeah,
parents that wanted to meet you, and adopted parents who gave you a wonderful life. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, you know, it has been, and I would encourage people, like, you know, people often say to me now, would you do it again? Yeah, I would do it again. And I would
uh,
encourage people who, you know, don't know, or you just have to be prepared for every eventuality. And there was lots of things that I was prepared for, and there was lots of things I wasn't prepared for. But look, at I have wonderful support here, and that's what got me through.
Well, Margaret, it was at Margaret Norton. It was an absolute joy talking to you, and it's a phenomenal story, and you're a very strong person. I only wish I had half the strength, I suppose, as you have, to have carried this from just a seed of a thought. I have to
Yeah.
do it to completing it, and I wish you huge success and blessings in the future.
Thanks very
And
much, and thanks for having me.
it's my pleasure. Shindera
All right.
leis an chlár, that's the end of the show. Until the next time, le cún of day. Bawalum tu galir chiacana, sonas agus groi. I wish you peace, happiness, and love. Agus gadei slán.